Welcome into another episode of Beers with Mears. I'm Hannah Mears, and today on tap we have Trevor Sikkema. He is an analyst for Pro Football Focus. He does a ton of college football focused stuff and a ton of NFL as well, which is exactly what we talk about today. He's been featured on some of the biggest shows on NFL television as well. He's a great analyst. So many people look for him for his opinions. So we have somebody on the show today who is extremely credible that you are going to want to tune into for all of the biggest headlines and information in the NFL. For Win or Lose, We Booze today, we're going to look at the Lakers and Nuggets game last night, and what a game it was. My goodness, what a way to start off the series. You have the Lakers and LeBron who have just been willing themselves into games. They looked a little unmatched in the first half, but really came back and gave everyone a little bit of a scare on the side of the Nuggets. But I had the Nuggets on the money line and could have parlayed that as well with the over. It didn't look like the over 222.5 was going to hit, but yet it did. So yeah, 2-0 in that game. For I'll drink to that this week, I'm going to give a shout out to the Tennessee Titans social media team for the schedule releases. Trevor and I talk about schedule release toward the end of this episode, and I am blown away by how simple and hilarious the Tennessee Titans schedule release was. They went down to downtown Nashville, and they essentially just pulled people off the street and asked them logos of teams for who the Titans would be playing. And they would show someone what a team logo would look like, and they tried their best at it, whether it was the Indianapolis Colts horseshoe and people were saying the Cowboys or something absolutely ridiculous. It was funny, it was simple, and exactly the type of content that we needed on schedule release day. So shout out to the Tennessee Titans social media team. For my beer review this week, I'm going to give you guys an awesome summer drink, okay? So I love all things beer. And this is actually a ginger beer, okay? So I'm not just going to be straight up drinking this, although you could. It tastes that delicious. This is Krabby's Original. I went to go to the store the other day, six-pack shop, asked the guy if they had any ginger beer. He had to go to the back and get it because he says it goes so fast. He hides it away. So he was so generous to get me some because I wanted to make some Moscow Mules. I'm a huge Moscow Mule girl, so I'm drinking beer or Moscow Mules. Pair this Krabby's Original ginger beer, which it's like a 9 on taste, and it pairs like a 10 out of 10 with a little splash of Tito's, some lime juice to your tasting, and you've got a delicious summer mule. What I like about this, since I'm a beer girl, an alcoholic ginger beer allows me to add less vodka to the mule, and so I'm not tasting vodka the whole time, and I can just taste and sit there and sip on a refreshing drink. So I'm telling you, get the alcoholic ginger beer, specifically this brand of Krabby's, add just a splash of Tito's and some lime juice, and you've got the perfect summer sipping drink by the pool. Without further ado, though, we are going to get to the episode with Trevor Sikkema. If you love football and everything Pro Football Focus and the statistics that they go for, then this is one of the guys that you need to follow. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Trevor Sikkema. So excited to have you here on the show today. So Trevor is everything at PFF, to say the least. He does a ton of college football, a ton of NFL, huge analyst host. He's been featured on some of the biggest shows in football, as well as just has so much credibility to his name. So Trevor, welcome to Beers with Beers. I am so excited to have you here with me today. And I have to know if you're a beer guy, because this is important to me.
I am. I'm not much of a craft beer person, but
Okay.
I've drank I'll just say a decent amount of light beers throughout my my college career and into my young adulthood. So yes, I would say that I am a beer guy. Yes.
There is nothing wrong with a light beer, okay? I'm all about a light beer, or even just, a little bit of a lighter IPA. I'm here for it. Obviously, hence the Beers with Mears. But what we really want to talk about today is everything about you, but also a little bit of NFL. That's what people are really excited about. Everyone's getting more intrigued as the summer inches closer and we start to get into those training camps and the battles. The draft just wrapped up. You had a huge part in draft analysis as well. So there's a lot to talk about. But first and foremost, I want to know, I'm curious about you before PFF. Who was young Trevor? Give me your background.
So I grew up just south of Tampa in a place called Bradenton, Florida, which has some of the best beaches in the country, I will biasly say. I went to college thinking that I would take over my dad's landscaping business, kind of keep it in the family. And I thought that that's where my life was going to go. Ended up going to a smaller private school out of high school, private university. So I thought I was just going to take business classes. Ended up doing that. Absolutely hated it. So I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. A friend of mine and I, who were really into sports, just took a sports radio class for fun because it's a sports radio class. It's a free it's a free A basically for us. And so we ended up loving it so much that I dedicated my college career to that. And I said, yeah, you know what? I want to change my major to this. I actually want to go for this. I think I could be decent at it. Ended up transferring over to the University of Florida because of their incredible broadcasting program that they have there. Graduated from UF back in 2014. Had the opportunity to cover the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in my hometown team as my first job full-time out of college. Now, just so everybody knows out there, that didn't happen immediately. I definitely went the live with your parents and then try to figure it out post-college life. That was certainly me. But a couple years after that, I had the opportunity to get a full-time job covering the Buccaneers, which was an absolute dream. Got to work for the Draft Network as well with some of my best friends in the business, which was an absolute blast. And now here I am at PFF. So kind of all over the place with how I got to the point I am now, but an incredible journey along the way already with just some amazing people that I've had the opportunity to meet and work with and just get to call friends in the industry and even in just regular life outside of work as well. So it's been an absolute dream getting to this point and still is working at PFF.
So working for your hometown team straight out of college, where have you seen the Buccaneers sort of morph into? Like, who were they when you were there compared to where they are right now coming into this season?
Oh man, it's such a beautiful journey for the Buccaneers because for the longest time, I would say there's a 10-year stretch after they had that Super Bowl in 2003 where they were awful. I mean, I think they still have the lowest winning percentage of any team in all four major American sports. They still, to this day, I think have the lowest winning percentage. So we went from when I was in high school, when I was in college and just outside of college, my friends and I went from being able to get a ticket at Raymond James Stadium for $20 to, of course, Tom Brady magically comes to the team. They're all of a sudden Super Bowl contenders. They win a Super Bowl in their home stadium, and it's like the stadium is absolutely packed out at all times. It kind of still is now. Obviously, we're barely post Tom Brady. We have yet to have a season without Tom Brady in there. So I know the city of Tampa. It's just a rejuvenation for football, what Tom Brady was to them over these last 3 years. And so that was a lot of fun to get to follow, knowing that your hometown team was so bad for so long. And then all of a sudden it felt like overnight they just turned into this contender and won a Super Bowl. So now they're on the opposite side of that. We're getting more into the rebuilding phase for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but certainly a lot of exciting things at quarterback with Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield. And now they signed John Wolford. And so it's going to be exciting no matter what. Just probably won't be Super Bowl exciting like it was a couple of years ago with Brady.
So let's start then in that division. Let's just start there because this is probably one of the divisions, I'm sorry, but it is probably one of the weakest in football. Last year, we saw that.
Say it with your chest, Hannah. It is. Say it with your chest.
I'm trying not to offend your Buccaneers. However, it was hard to watch at some points. Let's just be honest there, especially because like him or hate him, you root for Tom Brady in some way. You really do, because he's the story of immaculate in the NFL that we'll probably never see again. He really is someone that has set a high precedent and went there and did what he said he was going to do. So I feel like everyone was rooting for him in a little bit of a way. The Bucs are projected at 8.5 wins. I know this is before the schedule release technically, so a lot of this is sort of just based off of last year as well. So that could not be the final number that they're projected at. But is Baker Mayfield the solution here? Does he help them get over a little bit of this hump? Does he have enough of a chip on his shoulder to be successful here?
I think that they really like Baker. And so at least I think he has that going for him, where I think he's going to be the starter week 1. And I don't think they're going to give him a short leash. Like, I don't think it's going to be like, all right, you're struggling a little. We like Trask just as much. We're going to go with him immediately. I really do think that Baker is going to get the opportunity to be the starting quarterback for the entire season. So at least there's not going to be, at least they hope, this rotating door at quarterback, trying to figure out who's going to be the one. I do think that it's going to be Baker there. The 8.5 wins, right off the bat, my mind says a little bit under that. Like, I think probably 7 feels like the sweet spot. There's a lot of places that are projecting them right now to have a top 3 or a top 5 draft pick for next year's draft. I think they should love that because they need a quarterback, and next year's class looks like it has a lot of quarterbacks in it. But I just don't think the roster is that bad. It's definitely going to be a step back, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think that they're more of like a 6-7 win team, something like that. Maybe fringe top 10, but for that 8.5 number, I would probably say just a little bit less.
I think especially because what we saw from their defense and what they could do, right? And if you have a good defense, especially probably at least in their division, they should be fine. Baker has some weapons he can utilize, but I think a lot of it will solely be based on his performance a bit. I mean, he has to go somewhere and finally be the guy consistently. He has never been really a consistent quarterback. He has really high highs and really low lows. So I'm excited to see what he can do for them. But yeah, maybe the under 8.5 at this point is safe. Now, some other teams that I'm a little curious about, the Atlanta Falcons, projected around 7.5 wins at the moment. They picked Robinson, first round pick 8. Was this a bad decision for them, especially with what we know about running backs? Or do you think they finally just wanted a guy that they could put some hope into?
So I work for PFF, and PFF I feel like has led the charge for like you can't take running backs in the first round. So I don't know. I might get a call from my bosses after this, but like I don't know. Bad pick. It can't be a bad pick to me because Bijan's a good football player. He's one of the best football players that we had in this class. In fact, I would tell you he was the only blue chip, which is top tier offensive player that we had in this draft. The other two I felt like were on defense, Jalen Carter, Will Anderson. There were basically only 3 blue chip players. The one on offense was Bijan, and they got him at number 8 overall. And the Falcons have shown since Terry Fontenot has been their general manager, they're not afraid to take the player that they just think is the best. And Fontenot talked about that when he first became the general manager. He's like, look, this is a long rebuild. This isn't something that we're trying to fix in 1 year. We're going to pick good football players. And at the end of it all, 3-4 years into it, we're going to have a well-rounded, really good roster. They took a tight end in Kyle Pitts at number 4 overall, which is way higher than you normally take a tight end. They took Drake London, who is a wide receiver, and wide receivers do sometimes go early, but in last year's class where there were so many to choose from, they took him at number 8, and now they take a running back at number 8. So they're just clearly not afraid to go against traditional positional value if they think the player is good enough. This is a team that finished with the 3rd most rushing yards in the NFL last year, and it's just clear that that's what they want to do moving forward. I think they're going to use Bijan Robinson not only on the ground, but also as a receiver out of the backfield as well. He was one of the highest graded receiving backs that we had in college football in our PFF system. So it's not a bad pick. I can't call it a bad pick because he's too good of a player to say that it's a bad pick. Could it have been used elsewhere for higher positional value? Maybe. That's an argument that you might be able to make with some of the other guys that were on the board. But is it a bad pick? No. He fits their DNA. He fits their identity. And they're going to use all of his talents, his very high talents, as best they can in Atlanta.
And on top of that, right? Like he was being compared in some capacity to Saquon Barkley. So no one was saying that Saquon Barkley was a bad pick, despite whatever the Giants needed at the time. So I would say not a bad pick, but will they regret not taking Lucas Van Ness? The guy who is being deemed as Hercules, especially because the Falcons last year ranked bottom of the barrel in like QB pressures and sack percentage defensively. So do you think they're going to be regretting that a little bit, no matter what's happening offensively?
So on my big board, I wasn't the biggest fan of Lucas Van Ness. Now, I think he's a good player, but in terms of this home run, can't miss, Falcons got to take him in the top 10, I didn't see him that way. I saw him as more of a late first, early second round kind of a value player. And so for me, no. And when I look at this draft, I probably would have said the same thing about Tyree Wilson if they passed on Tyree Wilson, if he happened to be on the board. Now, he went 1 pick earlier, so he wasn't there. I'm curious if they would have taken Tyree Wilson because of what you said, the pass rush was so bad. But I really feel like the only player who would have tempted them away from Bijan Robinson would have been if Will Anderson somehow made it to number 8 overall. And Will obviously goes number 3. So he was going to go either number 2 or number 3, wherever the Texans were picking, if they traded up or if they didn't. I think that he was going to be their guy. So he wasn't even close, didn't even make it there. But honestly, I think that he was probably the only player that they would have selected. And so when it comes to, Bijan versus somebody like Van Ness or one of the other pass rushers, I don't have a problem with it still being Bijan at the end of the day.
How does Bryce Young fare being a Carolina Panther? You focused a lot on these guys that were going specifically really high in the draft. We talked about this quarterback class, and everyone was aiming for a guy like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Obviously, both went right back to back. So does Bryce Young fit in at Carolina, and does he really help them? They went and got Miles Sanders as well at running back. It seems like they're putting an extra emphasis on this offense. So is Bryce Young their guy?
I mean, he should be. They made the right choice taking him at number 1 overall. With the current draft class that they had to pick from, he was without a doubt, to me, the guy that you take and that you invest in. So, you mentioned the cast around him really isn't too bad. And when you just look at when you look at Carolina as a whole, I know that this team didn't earn the number 1 overall pick. They had the number 9 overall pick, and then they traded up to get to that point. But this roster is good, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It's young, talented defensive players who are ready to compete. That defense is ready to win a division championship this year. Now, without DJ Moore at receiver, yeah, there's a lot of unknown there. It's DJ Chark, who's new, Adam Thielen, who is new, Terrace Marshall, who is really getting an elevated role for the first time since his days at LSU. Laviska Shenault hasn't really developed into the player that we've wanted him to. I like Jonathan Mingo, the guy they drafted in the second round, but he's just a rookie. How much can you really lean on him there? And then, of course, they signed Miles Sanders, but again, a new guy in that room. So there's a lot of potential there. And for Carolina, anytime you're taking a quarterback number 1 overall, it's not going to be everything's good the next year, we're all good to go. It's going to be a little bit of time before that really comes to fruition. And I think that if Carolina makes the good moves next offseason as well, then we're talking about a team that could be poised to be at the top of this division for the short term over the next, 2-3 years, whatever it is. Because then at that point, the roster is going to be really strong. But love the coaching staff that they have there. Love that Frank Reich's the guy who is orchestrating things and putting things together. Love Ejiro Evero, their defensive coordinator, for what he did in Denver last season and what he's going to be able to do with the talent in Carolina. And so I do think that Bryce Young was the right pick. I think he'll struggle like all rookies struggle in their first year, but year 2, year 3, I think that Carolina's got the division right in their sights.
Well, especially in a division that isn't super quarterback strong at the moment, right? Bryce Young has an opportunity here to be the best quarterback in this division. That being said, the other one we didn't look at is Derek Carr, right? Is his career potentially on a really thin rope right now if he does not help the Saints in the next 1 to 2 years become a successful, respectable team?
I don't think he'll get another chance after this. So whether it's good or whether it's bad, I think that New Orleans is the last legitimate stop for him. Obviously, if it's good, he'll play out his contract that he currently signed. He might get another one depending on how much longer he's going to play. So if it's good, obviously he's not going to go anywhere anyways. He's going to stay in New Orleans. If it's bad, yeah, I don't know if we get to the point where he legitimately can be a starter then anywhere else for the rest of the league, because it was the Derek Carr debate was so heated. How much of the struggle is his Carr? How much is the supporting cast? How much is the coaching? How much is the offensive line, the run game, the lack of receiver? All this. It felt like every year you had evidence to be on either side of the line, for or against Derek Carr being a major issue for why Vegas, or I should just say the Raiders, because he was with the Raiders before they moved to Vegas, why they just were not able to get over the hump. I've been more often than not on team Derek Carr is good. Now, I'm not saying that he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but I have for a long time felt like he had the capabilities to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And then maybe some years when he hit it right, be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I've felt like he has that potential. And I do feel as though the Raiders let him down in a lot of ways. That is not to totally absolve him of blame, but I feel like I have landed on that camp of, hey, get Derek Carr a little bit more help, and I think that he could really make things happen for you. Obviously, it's a new spot, so you never know what's going to happen with somebody, but I do feel as though this is a good enough spot for us to get an answer, because if he's anywhere on the fence again, like even if it's just a little hot cold, then it's going to be cold no matter what. People are going to, if this isn't clearly a success for Derek Carr in New Orleans, people are immediately going to go, okay, he had all that time with the Raiders. He's got a new team and a new spot with the Saints, and it's still not working out. Like, he's just not going to be the guy. He is not going to be the quarterback that we thought that he could be when he was drafted all those years ago. He's not going to take a team to the promised land. So it can't be teetering on the line anymore. It's got to be clearly good. And I really do think that no matter what, New Orleans is probably his last stop as a starter.
Yeah, I think that's a fair evaluation of everything he is. I always, like you did, fared on the side of this isn't really Derek Carr's fault, especially when you watch press conference after press conference and him really seeming to bite his tongue about what was really happening. But then again, they did go get him his guy last year, and Adams was supposed to be that solution. So yeah, I do think he has a lot to prove here. He can do it, and New Orleans will be that place to do it. Let's move into a division that's a little more quarterback friendly that we can talk about. Let's talk about the AFC, and let's go with the AFC East, right? So we have the Bills, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Patriots. We know the Dolphins have the weapons when healthy to be a very competitive team. We know the Bills have Josh Allen, and they only added to his weaponry, getting a legitimate tight end as their first pick. But then you have the Patriots you're a little curious about. Is Mac Jones that guy? Does Bailey Zappi have a legitimate chance? Then you head over and look at the Jets, who have been the best reality TV show of the NFL offseason so far. So my first question to you is, who poses the bigger threat to knocking off the Bills this year with everything that's happened in this offseason in that division?
I think I have to say the Jets, because I was somebody who thought that last year, if you just gave the Jets competent quarterback play, I'm not even talking about like great quarterback play. I'm talking about like not catastrophic, bottom of the barrel, starting NFL caliber play. If you just gave them middle of the pack quarterback play, that's a playoff team. The rest of the team was playing so well, especially before Breece Hall got hurt, that would have been a playoff team, even with all the injuries that they had to the offensive line, all the changes they made on the offensive line. So I love that coaching staff. I love Robert Saleh. You get Aaron Rodgers in there, who not far removed from those back-to-back MVP seasons. I felt like last year, some people looked at Aaron Rodgers and they were like, all right, Rodgers is cooked, right? I mean, like, he's going down. You could see it ending. I don't know. Like, I think that he was just really frustrated in Green Bay, the way that he's been really frustrated over the last couple of years. And the thing that I believe is going to be different for Rodgers is when you go back to what he has talked about this offseason. He mentioned on the Pat McAfee show, when he talked about, I'm going to play for the New York Jets, something that he also explained is before he did that darkness retreat, which interesting enough, he said, I was closest to retiring. That was where my heart was leaning, that I was done. Then he does the darkness retreat and he says, okay, I want to keep playing football, but I want it to be somewhere different. I want it to be with the New York Jets. This feels like the right spot. So not only do I think that they're still getting a good passer, a good quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, I don't think the wheels have fallen off for him yet. I think they are getting a rejuvenated Aaron Rodgers, somebody who is going to enjoy going to work, somebody who is, now that's not to say everything's going to be perfect, right? If they start 1-3, you start bickering, the New York media starts going after you, things might change. But I really do believe that they are going to get somebody who is focused and motivated to truly give it his best. Whatever Aaron Rodgers has left in the tank, they're going to get the best version of that, I fully believe. So for me, I trust that more than I trust what's going on at quarterback for Miami. And ultimately, that's why I would lean the Jets are the bigger threat to the Bills at the top than Miami is, even though Miami's roster is just stacked all around outside of the quarterback position.
I would agree with that, especially because Aaron Rodgers is coming in mentally a lot better this year. They went and got his guys that he wanted for him. He's coming in as the man, the leader. Sorry, any quarterback below him right now, respectfully zip your lips and stop the little comments about this quarterback coming in. We know who we're talking about, because Aaron Rodgers isn't the guy to mess with, and he's going to go in there and make a statement. And I think all eyes are going to be on him. All eyes to me should be on the Patriots as well. This has been a dominant franchise. As a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I have seen the wrath of what this team has been. What the hell is going on in New England, though? Who are they? Do they have an identity at this point, or is that what they're trying to build this year? They went and got Gesicki and Smith-Schuster, two big targets that they needed for Mac Jones. Fair, some physical guys in there. But who are they? I can't look at New England and like one player stick out of my mind and that be like, well, that's who they are. That's who they're building around. I truly don't know. So what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, and it feels like post Tom Brady in New England, we've just been trying to say, like, oh, it's Belichick. He'll figure it out. He's the greatest coach of all time. And like Belichick is clearly one of the greatest head coaches of all time, if not the greatest NFL head coach of all time, right? But how much longer can we just say, it's just Belichick? Because Hannah, I'm totally with you. And I felt like this over the last couple of years. I don't know what the identity of this team is. They don't have a focal point at wide receiver. They don't have a focal point at tight end. They don't have a focal point at running back. They've got, okay, Matthew Judon's great, and it's a veteran secondary, but now that veteran secondary is kind of washed out. Judon's still there, but he's really the only like Belichick super successful player. I love what Kyle Duggar kind of turning into, but he's more of a Swiss Army knife. The coaching staff, it's Bill O'Brien, it's Gerard Mayo, it's Bill Belichick. Like it's the same guys, and it's the same system that has existed on this team for decades. How much longer? This is going to sound really offensive because, again, I'm sitting in a desk chair in a small non-painted office, and Bill Belichick is probably sitting in his chair of a throne with multiple Super Bowl rings. But how much longer can we go into every season saying, oh, it's Belichick. He'll figure it out. These are his guys to work out. Because right now, they do not have those go-to players to point to that you go, that's where the offense revolves around. That's where the defense revolves around. This is how it's going to work in New England. We're all kind of just blindly trusting that Belichick's going to figure it out. And if there's anybody that I would blindly trust to figure it out, it would be Belichick. But when it comes to betting what they're going to be, predicting what they're going to be, it's a really tough ask right now with the roster the way that it is.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you emphasized that point that I did as well with like, they don't have those go-to guys yet. Here's where I also think Bill Belichick sort of maybe tarnished a little bit of his perfect reputation that he's had last year. The Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi controversy that had happened a little bit. And Bailey Zappi came in and proved he can be that guy. But then Belichick kind of took him away and was like, no, Mac Jones is going to be our guy. But it was a little bit of a toss-up there. And it seemed like he didn't fully trust Mac Jones yet. So how is your team supposed to believe this is your guy? How are you going to build around him if you're not sure if you trust him? Do you think Bailey Zappi gets a chance? There is a legitimate battle maybe going on, or do you think Bill Belichick just says, listen, this is the guy we're going with, focusing on in training camp. It's really not a competition.
I don't know how open of a competition it will be, but I don't think Mac Jones is like, yeah, he's the starter this year no matter what. Clearly, we saw last year, whether it was injury or whatever it was, like they were willing to give Bailey Zappi a chance. Whatever Mac Jones was doing, either was it I don't want to say it wasn't good enough to start, but it wasn't good enough for people to say, yes, this is the guy, doesn't matter, he'll struggle, it's fine, the highs are worth the lows. It doesn't feel like that's the case with Mac Jones, because you're getting the lows and you're getting some level of highs, but are the highs high enough to make up for some of the mistakes that he's continuing to make? And I thought Mac Jones was a solid quarterback coming out. I thought the projections of him going number 3 overall to the San Francisco 49ers was insane to me. When the rumors came out, the Niners traded all the way up to 3. People were like, oh, they're trading up for Mac Jones. I thought that was nuts at the time. He ended up being QB5 in that draft, but still ended up being a top 15 overall pick, which is the record of 5 quarterbacks going in the top 15. Even I thought that was a little bit rich. For 5th quarterback in the draft, just picking him in the middle of the first round, I wasn't sure that he was that caliber of a guy, because you go from a perfect situation in Alabama to something totally different. And I haven't had this large amount of faith that Mac Jones was for sure going to be a starting NFL caliber quarterback. I didn't have that faith when he was coming out in the draft. And I still am basically in the same spot where if he struggles, like if this team is 2-5 and they're not playing great, again, like the offense has got no identity, maybe they do end up making the switch to Bailey Zappi. I just looked this up because I was very curious. I genuinely believe that the Patriots are going to be last in the division this year. I think they're going to finish last. And I was like, when's the last time the Patriots finished last in the division? 2000 is the last year that they finished last in their division.
Wow.
So it's been 22 seasons, 23
over
would be
2 decades.
Season.
2 decades.
Crazy.
That's insane to me. So maybe there is some more pressure, and that's why it's such an interesting division to look at, because the mighty Bills, are they there? They're so close. When are they going to crumble? And the Jets are coming in and sneaking in. I love what you said about Bill Belichick, possibly, sticking one to the Jets. As a Steelers fan, I was watching that happening and thinking, never in a million years did we think Bill Belichick would do something to benefit the Pittsburgh Steelers. But nonetheless, the Steelers get to move up. They get their offensive lineman they've been hoping for in Broderick Jones. And you gave their draft an A++. Give us a little insight as to why the Steelers deserved not just an A, not an A+, but an A++ in your opinion.
This is my favorite draft because you can go rounds 1 through 7, and there are real, genuine arguments for starting players that were drafted through all 7 rounds of this draft. Now, they didn't pick in round 5 and 6, but like Broderick Jones, absolutely starting caliber offensive tackle. Joey Porter Jr., we figure he's going to start at outside corner. Keanu Benton should start along that defensive line. Darnell Washington, okay, whether he's the starter or not with Pat Freiermuth in the first season at least, you know that he's going to impact how much they're going to be able to play multi-tight end sets and 12 personnel. Nick Herbig, situational pass rusher who's going to absolutely be impactful for them, maybe even becomes a starter in future years. Corey Trice, their 7th round pick, Purdue corner, way too good a take to be picked in the 7th round. Now, he's got injury issues. He's got an injury history that certainly goes into him being picked in the 7th round. But like, he tore his ACL 2 seasons ago, came back this year, was playing with a brace on. I was told that him playing with the brace was kind of awkward for him. It caused him to have a little bit of a groin injury. So he was even playing this past year hurt. But man, if he had some rest, if everything's good to go, if his body is good to go, this is a starting caliber outside corner who they just picked in the 7th round. And that's why the Steelers had to get an A++ for me, because you never get to say that. You never get to say that you have starting caliber 22-man players through all 7 rounds of the draft. It just does not happen. And the Steelers are one of the very few teams that you're going to see in any given year that had the ability to do that with the players that they picked.
Yeah, I completely agree. As a Steelers fan, I don't think there's been a draft in the past couple of years that I've really focused on saying like, that's exactly what we needed. That's exactly what we needed. They went so aggressively, boom, 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 and filled every little spot. But a big reason as to why they were able to get their guys, in my opinion, is what they did in free agency as well. I thought it was a great free agency, getting a lot of veteran guys so that when they brought in these young guys, there's depth, but B, there's not just these young guys coming in and trying to be put in these positions to start. They now have people they can look to for guidance, for learning. And to me, that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers are. They make sure that everybody has that veteran leadership presence to look up to. And so now when you have a guy like Joey Porter Jr., let's say, comes in, obviously we know he's going to be one of those rookie players that has a ton of eyes on him, and rightfully so. The pressures of who your dad was on this team, but also hey, rookie, he believed he should have been the Steelers' first pick. So now you have even more pressure to sort of prove yourself. That being said, you're on one of the highest paid defenses in the league. You've got when healthy, probably the best defensive front as well. So you take a little bit of pressure off. What do you think will be considered a successful season for a guy like Joey Porter Jr.? Because mind you, one of the Steelers' best players that they just sent to the Lions at a cornerback position was Cam Sutton with only 48 tackles last year. And he was considered one of their best. Like, people were saying they weren't really sure if they should have got rid of him because he was sort of the best that they had. So there's not a ton of statistical things that Joey Porter Jr. could do wrong unless he really tanked. But like going over 48 tackles shouldn't be super unattainable for him. So what do you think will be considered a successful season for a guy like Joey Porter Jr., all things considered? And I know that was a lot to throw your way.
No, I don't have statistical benchmarks for him, because especially playing corner, a lot of your statistics are kind of opportunistic. It depends, like, is the ball, how much is the ball coming your way? You know, that goes into forcing completions or tackles, like you mentioned, interceptions, all that kinds of stuff. A successful season for Joey Porter Jr., to me, especially on this specific Steelers defense, is simple. Don't get benched. And that may sound, like an obvious one, but when you look at this Steelers secondary, one of the free agents that they brought in was Patrick Peterson. Okay, Patrick Peterson, he's a little bit over the hill from his prime, but he's still a good football player, right? He's somebody that can start on the outside for them. They still have Levi Wallace. They still have Ahkello Witherspoon. So they have other options. So if Porter is struggling so much, they're going to replace him because we know that Mike Tomlin ain't finishing below 500. So, like if they're going to be in the hunt for, of course, another winning season, maybe a wild card playoff berth, then they can't have Porter being a liability for them as much as they would like for him to get out there and, of course, learn and, kind of take his lumps and learn from NFL speed and NFL wide receivers and learn what works, what doesn't when it comes to the regular season. They also just can't have him be killing him out there. So they have options to replace him. And I just don't want to see him get benched. I've had former NFL players tell me this before, and it's a phrase that I love. So I talk about it all the time. Playing rookie corner or starting as a rookie corner in the NFL is like trying to drink water through a fire hose. You are trying to intake so much that it's overwhelming. You're trying to remember your own new NFL teaching. You're trying to acclimate to the NFL strength and conditioning program. You're trying to work on your technique. You're trying to remember what works in this league and what worked in college and the total difference. You're also trying to study up on wide receivers. Okay, what are they doing off the line of scrimmage? What routes do they love? What are their tendencies? Like, you are trying to just take in all of these things at once that, even though you have a thirst to learn, is the way that it was put to me, it is truly water through a fire hose. You can't take in all of it. So it's just a matter of surviving out there, making sure that when you fail, you don't make the same mistake twice, and that you're getting better to the point where at the end of the year, you're happy, you're comfortable, and you're more confident than where you were at the very beginning of the year. So my goal for Joey Porter Jr. is don't get benched. Be a player who is playing well enough, although he is learning and is going to make mistakes, to where they don't want to have to take you off the field. And then if that's the case, by the end of year one, you're going to have a really confident, good corner who can play man coverage for you on the outside.
Yeah, I think he's going to get into a point where it's going to be, you have to almost start playing little mistake-free football. There's got to be, you were in the right position, but you missed this. You're covering a guy. He's going to make he's going to make a really nice catch every now and then. That happens in the league, but it's going to be being in the right positions, being a guy that can be relied upon where people aren't holding their breath or you're getting picked apart on your side. So like you're saying, don't get benched, Joey Porter Jr. It's not a terrible benchmark to have for him. But being, like we said, with the Steelers defense, they don't have to rely on him a ton, or they shouldn't have to if TJ Watt is healthy and the way that they build up that defense. Joey Porter Jr. should be sitting pretty to be a developmental rookie in the NFL to become the future of a franchise that has been known for that dominant defense. And it's got to prove the Steelers can draft cornerbacks again. That would be nice. You did mention something, though. The Steelers probably won't, like you said, because of the Tomlin era, have a losing season, sitting at 8.5 wins. So you're saying you think the Steelers, again, could at least get 9, if not more. I feel like 8.5 is a little bit of a snub. I think this team's going to be a little sneakier than what people think, especially because they finished above 8.5 last year without their guy, Kenny Pickett, being their starting quarterback for half the year.
Yeah, if the mark is 8.5, like I told you, I'm not gonna bet on Mike Tomlin not having a winning season, so I would be betting the over there. I don't know how much of the over it would be, but I'd be pretty comfortable at 9 or 10 wins with the Steelers team. They're always coached so well. I mean, to honestly give Tomlin his flowers, he's unbelievable for him to have the longevity and the success that he's been able to have. Obviously, stability at the quarterback position when it was Ben Roethlisberger goes a long way into that as the rest of the roster changed throughout the years. But something that really stood out to me with Pickett last year is that I believe it was from week 10 on, the only quarterback who had a higher PFF passing grade than Kenny Pickett in the NFL was Joe Burrow. So throughout most of the second half of the season, he was number 2 in the NFL in terms of passing grade in our system. And that just shows the confidence that he had. And I had the chance to talk to him after the season. I kind of asked him about it, and he's like, yeah, you learn what works and what doesn't in those first 3 or 4 games I was starting. And then I just started to get really confident after that. So if the team is fully healthy, and of course, injuries go a long way into whether or not you hit the over under win total. If this Steelers team is fully healthy for the majority of the season, for the most part, I think we're looking at 9 or 10 wins for this team.
I agree with that. And I like what you said about Kenny Pickett and his confidence. Something that I covered in depth last year on different shows that I did, and something we always looked into was just, when were they going to give him some permission I guess you could say, to call his own shots. And he did get to that point by the end of the season, which is a huge step forward for coming in this year. He now commands the locker room. He feels confident. Guys know that he's their guy. The other day at the Steelers draft, so they bring in Broderick Jones sitting beside him, and Kenny Pickett's looking at him like a proud dad, ready to get him in front of him. So this team is fun. It's exciting. They're confident with one another. But Kenny Pickett, here's the biggest debate in Pittsburgh all of the time from every media member I hear about where they believe he is in comparison to all of starting quarterbacks in the league. Do you think Kenny Pickett potentially, because people don't really have him as a top 10 quarterback in the league, I'll go 7 or 8 because of who we know as the guys, maybe the top 5. Does Kenny Pickett turn into a top 7 or 8 quarterback this year? Does he have the potential?
This year, I think best case scenario for him would probably be like 7 or 8. Because I'm you're looking at the list right now. The guys that you know are going to be in there. I mean, if you're taking Tom Brady out, obviously because he retired, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts. I'm a big Dak Prescott fan, so I think that Prescott's going to be in there. Lamar obviously coming back to Baltimore. I think that he's right there. And so like after those players, I can't remember if I said Aaron Rodgers yet or not, but after those,
that's about 7. So yeah, so then you're
right.
looking at 8, which is why I said probably like 7, 8, or 9 spot.
That's the ceiling for him, it feels like. Like if he's going to really take a big next step forward, whether or not he's firmly in that top 8 conversation, for you to just have a rookie quarterback that in year 2 you're already talking about as a top 10 caliber guy, that would be huge for him. If Kenny is just in that conversation of, okay, is he top 10? Is he top 8? Is he top 12? That's a win for the Steelers. Like they would absolutely love that because it's often, the end of that second year into the third year where if you're already in that conversation, then the leap can go up to, okay, maybe you can get even higher. Maybe you can even crack that top 5 conversation. And so that's, who knows whether or not he'll eventually get there. I think a lot of things go into it, right? The offensive line, the run game that you have with you, the pass catchers, how well you gel with the offensive coordinator, all of those things definitely go into it. But to me, that would be a great goal. And the high point for him is getting into that conversation where he might be that top 10, top 12, maybe even top 8 kind of a quarterback.
Yeah, and undoubtedly, like top 10, like unquestionable, he's in the top 10 would be a major goal and a huge stamp to the Pittsburgh Steelers and where they could be going. Another quarterback that I think is one of the sneakiest picks in the NFL draft, Hendon Hooker goes to the Detroit Lions. Do you think this is one of the biggest steals in the draft if he ends up being healthy? Because I feel like everyone and their mother in the the sports world in general in athletics has torn an ACL, has had some type of knee injury, and has bounced back from it. Saquon Barkley is probably the most relevant case at the moment for that. Do you think Hendon Hooker could be the face of the Detroit Lions in the next 2 years, let's say? And then it would be considered maybe one of the biggest steals of the draft looking back.
Yeah, I think that certainly if you get a starting caliber quarterback in the second round, and no matter what the backstory is, that's a massive win for you. Now, the Lions seem to believe in Jared Goff a lot more than the rest of the world does. So I don't know. It feels like they aren't really quick to even believe that Hendon Hooker is going to be the guy to take over next year. I feel like maybe for Hendon Hooker, it's a longer term play than that. Maybe more of the timeline that we saw with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers, where it's like year 3 where he's getting into action, because again, it just doesn't feel like they're really pressed to move on from Jared Goff. But when it comes to being a steal of the draft, whether or not it's the biggest steal or not, I of course, time will tell, but you are swinging the biggest swing of the bat when you go after a quarterback. And so certainly if he hits as a second round quarterback, if he eventually becomes your starter and one that you sign a second contract to, a big contract to, that you have a lot of faith in, then that's it. That's a huge win for them. I admittedly wasn't the biggest Hendon Hooker fan throughout draft season. However, I think that I felt like I had to be a little bit less of a Hendon Hooker fan because people were talking about him going top 5, top 10 overall. And I'm like, okay, pump the brakes. He had a good season. Please, allow us to praise him appropriately. You don't have to take it to levels that it doesn't need to get to. I always felt like he'd be a fantastic second round pick, especially because the ACL tear, you're going to have to give him a full year to recover. It doesn't feel like he's going to get any action this upcoming year, but that also is great because it's not a ton of pressure, right? Then he can continue to work in Ben Johnson's offense, who came back, the offensive coordinator who led the best passing offense in the NFL last season that we saw. You get a year in his system while you fully recover. There's not all this pressure to just get him out there very quickly. And I think that Detroit's a great landing spot for Hendon Hooker. And again, if he becomes their starting quarterback one day, then yeah, it will look like a draft steal for them, no doubt.
Yeah, I like what the Lions are building. I think it's so fun. They were such a cool team to root for last year to see where Dan Campbell goes. A lot of that,
Right.
yes, was probably the Hard Knocks hype, but still cool to see where that program is headed. But also pressure both ways, right? Pressure off of Jared Goff, knowing the guy, that could have been one of the top tier quarterbacks is sort of laying back right now. He has time. His team believes in him for a year or two. So I'm excited about that. Speaking of other quarterbacks, though, who caused you more sleepless nights? What situation? Lamar Jackson in his contract, or will Aaron Rodgers actually end up a Jet?
Oh, so the one the one that had more pressure to it was without a doubt Lamar Jackson, because I think with Aaron Rodgers, you knew he wasn't going to play for the Packers again. So it was basically just, is he going to be a Jet or is he going to retire? And it felt like even though the deal was dragging on, they were going to get something done. So that one wasn't nearly as stressful as Lamar, who I don't know what numbers were real and what weren't that weren't reported, but it was reported that I'm sure the Ravens had offered him multiple contracts at this point that he has said no to. Then the Ravens counter with their negotiating strategies and allow him to hit basically free agency with a non-exclusive franchise tag. And then all the owners kind of coming out and saying like, no, we're not interested in him. This team's not interested. So it was almost like this big, whoa, hold on here. Is Lamar going to hold out? Because Baltimore wasn't going to let him walk away for nothing. They were going to have him on the franchise tag. But then is the big like, oh, okay, well, is he going to hold out the whole season? Are they going to even let him go next season? What's going to happen? It's a new offensive coordinator anyway. So no question, the one that was more stressful was the Lamar situation, because there were just more realities that could have broken off with him being on another team or him going back to Baltimore or him holding out, not knowing how much that he would put his foot in the ground and say, I'm not playing until I get a fully guaranteed contract. Like that was the situation that definitely caused the most stress to me.
Not to mention the Baltimore Ravens would have had to change their entire way that they have to change the entire way they play football when Lamar Jackson gets hurt.
Right.
Not there. You
Right.
have to, because of who the player he is. He's that run threat quarterback. He's a dual threat quarterback, but that run threat is what people are looking at. So in my opinion, they changed the entire way they play the game of football, which is why I think they let it go on for as long as it did and were willing to work with him. But what type of season do you think he needs to have now because he finally got that deal? Like he
Healthy.
can't sit back and he has to be healthy, right?
Yeah, no, that's the main thing for me. It's just like, Lamar, be healthy. I just a full 17 game season. Let's see it. That's what I want to see from him. He is one of the most magical, incredible, dynamic players in the game. You said it perfectly. You have to completely change your offense when Lamar Jackson is your quarterback. And when I say that, I don't mean it as an insult. Some people might say like, oh, you got to limit the offense. No. This guy is so special. He is so unique. He is so one of one that you have to design a completely different offense, because it's not like the backup quarterback behind him is able to operate the same things the way that Lamar Jackson is. It's just not to that level. So, of course, I would love to see him become more consistent as a passer, but I also feel like he gets too much of a bad rap when it comes to processing the field, going through progressions, ball placement. Like, are those things perfect? No, but Lamar gets judged more harshly for those things than other quarterbacks do because of the nature of his rushing ability, and people saying like, he'll never be this consistent passer. It's okay if he's not as cerebral of a passer as Drew Brees was or Peyton Manning was. Like he brings more elements to the game with his legs to where that's okay. So first and foremost, just want to see him healthy. He's an amazing player. He's such a fun player to watch. Would love to see a fully healthy season from him. And then, of course, with some extra receivers now in that receiver room, you got Odell Beckham Jr., hopefully he's healthy as well. You have Rashad Bateman. You drafted Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews, is going to be reliable for you. Yeah, hopefully J.K. Dobbins is a fully healthy year after he was banged up as well. So would love to see that entire offense and what it looks like with all those guys fully healthy.
That offense can be scary, and that's coming from the girl in the AFC North with the Steelers looking at that always dreading playing the Ravens because of the smash mouth football game you get. But I want to see the Ravens at their best against the Steelers at their best. I want to see that storyline play out. I'm so beyond excited for that. So everyone stay healthy because that's what we need. Something else that has been breaking headlines, Mama Kelsey, is she replacing Adam Schefter? She is breaking schedule release rumors on her Facebook page. I was cracking up when I saw this. So are you going to be friending Mama Kelsey on Facebook just to see if any of her rumors are more legitimate than what Schefter's putting out?
It's so funny because when I got my first job in the industry, working for PeterReport.com, covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I didn't realize how much of a traffic driver schedule release stuff was. Like, I guess I just didn't realize how much people care. I was like, before I worked full time for them, I just said, yeah, I mean, cool. I mean, it's a schedule. Cool. Like, we'll all figure it out. But when I started working full time, it was like, no. You got to get the scoop. Like, you got to be first tweeted out and everything. And so I went to such great lengths. I was following these Instagram pages that had like 20 total followers, but they kind of like had a connection where like they might know somebody who like might know the schedule. And so you're just scouring however you can to find this. Mama Kelsey tweeting that out is awesome. Love the fact that she's getting the upper hand on Adam Schefter. I have to say though, I mean, it's so cool seeing what the Kelseys are doing and the access that we are getting to these players as they are playing the game, right? I think we always get former players who pop on to ESPN or NFL Network or just like any show, wherever it is, and they give us that that perspective that only they can bring as former players. But we are in a new age of current players now still able to give us that perspective that no one else can give us, but it's live, it's week in and week out. So like the Kelsey show, the Kelsey podcast has been so much fun to listen to, and their parents obviously being a big part of it. And now they're kind of becoming little media personalities along with them. And I don't know. I think the way that they're going about it has been a lot of fun for the league. So shout out to Mama Kelsey for making a name for herself.
It's hilarious also because I'm not going to go tell Mama Kelsey she's wrong. Do you want to go tell Jason and
No, of course,
mother that she's wrong publicly? Absolutely not. She's right. Whatever she puts out, that's what I will believe it. I will publicly believe whatever she's got. Right? I'm not telling them their mom's wrong.
If it's wrong, Goodell should change the schedule so that she is right. Like that's what we're talking about here. That's the way that's the order of operations here.
Completely agree. Shout out to Mama Kelsey. Like you said, it's been really cool seeing these athletes. Cam Hayward actually hosted live his New Heights that's the Kelsey's brother, his Not Just Football podcast for the Steelers live at their draft show. And we got all the exclusive access to him and who he is and how he interacts with his teammates, which was so cool for fans. So very awesome. My last few questions for you. Are you planning a wedding soon?
Yes. Yeah, we are. I mean, loosely planning the wedding. We got engaged last year. We knew that we weren't in a super big rush to get engaged. It's crazy because, we weren't in a super big rush to immediately get married right after we got engaged because the COVID year screwed everything up with weddings.
Yes.
Because you got to think about like people couldn't get married for like a year and a half. So people didn't stop, getting engaged for a year and a half. And so now everything is so backed up. Like everything, all of the venues that you would want, all of, like the vendors, everything is like, oh, it's a couple years of it. So we're just, we're going through all of the many different options of how quick we want to do it, where we want to do it, all that kinds of stuff.
Your fiance, Alyssa, is one of the powerhouses in reporting in the SEC and all of college football, in my opinion. I admire her so much, being someone who is young and looked up to her. I love everything that she does. She brings such a raw and just real persona to the sport, which is what we all need. What's the story of how you guys met?
Oh, it's a classic Twitter love story, actually. So honestly, when I was covering the Buccaneers down in Tampa, she was working local news covering the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Jags and the Bucs would have joint practices and play each other almost every single preseason. So, there were times, like when you're coming up in the industry and you're following a bunch of different reporters who cover different teams. I had seen her around, and so I kind of followed her on social media, and We hadn't really like officially totally met or anything. We were just kind of like social media friends. Like she had followed me because I cover the Bucs and vice versa. But we never really like directly interacted. She worked with a good friend of mine in the industry who eventually one day was just like, hey, you should you and my coworker, I feel like you guys would be great together. And both of us, I think at the time, were just like, nah, I mean, long distance. I mean, we don't need that in our life. But then eventually we kind of both found an interest in one another. He ended up facilitating, giving us the alley-oop. And then, one day I slid in the DMs real smooth, and the rest is history, if you will.
That's bold. Listen, outkicked your coverage on that one.
Without question. Yes.
I'm kidding. You're a gem. So I really admire everything she does, though. Are you ever just like so impressed? I know you're always putting out pictures of her and stuff, and she's doing all of her reporting, but what she's able to do and how she's able to do her job, considering you work in football as well. Are you ever just so impressed to just stop and watch how amazing she's doing?
I mean, the crazy thing is I think that for as much as people even admire her, they don't even know what goes into her pulling off the schedule that she has every single year. And it's not just football season. I mean, football season is insane for her. She's got a studio show on Tuesday. She's got radio that she does on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She's prepping for games. She's meeting coaches. She's meeting with players. She flies out on Friday. She's got a game that she's sidelining on Saturday. She flies back on Sunday, and then it's immediate prep the next Monday. And like that is truly 4 months in a row. And then right when that's done, you get a little bit of a holiday season, but she jumps straight into basketball for SEC basketball coverage. You've got the tournaments there. Now she's jumping into softball and baseball. So she doesn't just do football. She does all of these different sports. Her knowledge, her preparation, her instincts, her personality, it is just all so incredible to watch her work. I mean, she is truly, I'm not just lucky enough to be a part of her life in a like romantic way, but she is like a role model to me. I mean, like the just how talented she is and how wonderful she is at her job, how much people respect her for her work ethic and how great she is. That is something that I get to look up to from a front row seat every single day. So it is really cool to get that front row seat to everything that she does.
The standard has been set for romance in the football world and in the sports world. She's incredible. You're incredible at what you do too. You guys deserve the best wedding celebration when it does happen. The last thing we do here on Beers with Mears with every guest is add songs to our Beers with Mears playlist. Okay. So there's a Spotify playlist that has accumulated, and every single guest has given 3 songs that they would drink to, that they would party to, whatever they would set the mood to have a beverage. So let's make it more like wedding themed. What are going to be like 3 songs that you're hoping to play on the dance floor? Something that's going to either get the party started or something you hope to hear, she hopes to hear. Let's hear it.
Okay. I'm going to give you 3 very different genres, because that's very us.
Perfect.
That's very her. That's very me. The first one, she got me a lot more into country music, I would say. So
Love that.
First one is Beer Never Broke My Heart by Luke Combs, like an absolute rock anthem. Luke is truly one of my favorite country artists. So that one's on there. I love throwback emo music, and I'm kind of like I've gotten her a little bit more into it. She listened to it a little bit in high school, but now like with my friends and I, we all jam to it. So Misery Business by Paramore, because it is just like everybody knows all the lyrics to it. Everybody's going to be screaming it out on the dance floor. And then the last one, I think I have to go with a song that we bonded over just a couple months into us dating for a car ride karaoke session, and that is Grills by Nelly, because we know like all the words to that song together, and we were belting it out in the car for a long drive around Jacksonville, and I think those have to be the 3 that represent us the best.
Listen, if you guys put together a music playlist, share it on Spotify with all of us, or share it somewhere so we can download it, because that's how my shuffle goes in my car, right? It goes straight from like rap to throwbacks to country to we're going like screamo. So all the things.
Yes,
I love it. It's great. You can never have one genre, right? But Trevor, thank you so much for joining me. I know you have a busy schedule just as much as she does, so I appreciate you more than you know. Everyone, he is such an expert on everything football, but just such a fun follow as well on social media. So we'll make sure everyone can follow you as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on Beers with Mears, Trevor.
I appreciate it, Hannah. It's always great to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.